I have seen so many solutions of this problem, yet it just keeps on getting more and more confusing. And don't worry if you aren't able to get the solution in the first time. It is definitely not an easy problem to solve. I'm gonna try my very best to simplify it as much as possible by going step by step and creating diagrams wherever necessary. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. First, I'm gonna explain you the problem statement and we will also look at a sample test case. We will then go step by step how you can build up a dynamic programming solution. And after that, we're also going to do a dry run of the code so that you can actually visualize how all of this is actually working in action. Without further ado, let's get started. The problem statement is relatively simple to understand. You are given an integer array and a target sum. And then what do you have to do? You are allowed two particular symbols, plus and a minus. You have to use this symbol with each of the integer in the array and then form an expression. So you know that there can be so many different expressions possible. For example, you can use a plus sign with every integer and that will give you a result of 5. You can also use a negative sign with every integer and that will give you a result of minus 5. And you can make a whole different combination with it. What you can do is you can alternate and that will give you a result of 1. So you know that there are a lot of different possibilities. What you need to do is you need to find out the total number of expressions that are possible such that the result of them equals to this target value. For this particular test case, there will be 5 such expressions and these are those 5 expressions. There cannot be any other expression when the result is 3. So for this particular test case, 5 will be your answer. Now, if you feel that the problem statement is even more clear to you, feel free to stop the video right over here and try the problem once again on your own. Otherwise, let us dive into the solution. When we start to think about the solution, we know that a brute force solution certainly wouldn't work because you can have a very huge array and then there can be so many different possible combinations. Certainly, if you apply the brute force way and try to find out every combination, you will get the answer. But it is gonna take a lot of your time. So naturally, we will need to approach this problem in a different manner. And how do we know that this problem can be solved using dynamic programming? That is because when you see this array, you know that you have to arrive at a target sum. And the number of elements that you keep on adding to your array, you know that this sum will be dependent on all of the previous values that you have already calculated. So to arrive at an efficient solution, you need to somehow reuse the results that you have already evaluated for your previous elements. And then you can start to include the new elements. And that is what is showing a optimal substructure property. So to simplify this problem as much as possible, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a DP map. And this DP map will tell me that for this particular sum, what are the number of ways? Just keep this in mind. I will take this DP array or a DP map that is telling me that for a particular sum, how many ways are possible. So naturally, you have to start somewhere, right? So first of all, I'm going to initialize my DP array something like this. And what does this mean? It means that to get a sum of 0, I have one way possible. And what is that way? That you don't pick any element. That means I am at the very starting point right now. I haven't taken up my array at all. I am just saying that to get a sum of 0, there is only one way possible, right? And that is you don't pick any element. Now what do you have to do? You have to pick up an element, right? And that element is 1. So at this point of time, you have two choices available. Either you pick up this element with a plus sign or you pick up this element with a minus sign, correct? And based upon both of these conditions, what will the new sum be? So to find it out, the current sum was 0 and then if you add a 1, then the new sum will be 1, correct? And now if the current sum was 0 and you subtract a minus 1, the new sum will be minus 1. So these are the two new sums that you have got. So what I will do is I will now create a new DP array. And this DP array will store the same information. So I have DP1 equals to 1. it is telling me that to get a sum of 1, one way is possible. And what was that way? This was the way, correct? And the new DP array is DP minus 1 equals to 1. That means to get a sum of minus 1, there is one way possible. And this is that particular way, right? Just bear with me and you will understand what is actually happening. Up till now, we started with this DP array and now we are at this particular DP array. We have to move forward now. So this time we will start with the DP array that we had got in our earlier case, correct? And now what do you want to do? You want to pick the next element. The next element is also 1. So for both of these conditions, you will have two different conditions each. Either you pick a plus 1 or you pick a minus 1. And similarly for this case also, either you pick a plus 1 or you pick a minus 1. So now what is the new sum? If the sum was 1 and you pick a plus 1, what do you get? You get a 2, correct? If the sum was 1 and you pick a minus 1, what do you get? You get a 0. If the sum was minus 1 and you pick a plus 1, then the sum becomes 0. If the sum was minus 1 and you pick a minus 1, then the sum becomes minus 2, right? So now what did just happen? Now we are getting new sums. So we have to update our DP array. So what I am getting for DP minus 2? That means to get a sum of minus 2, how many ways are possible? So if you check, these are my resultant sums. To get a sum of minus 2, how many ways are possible? There is this just one way available, right? So I can write down my value over here, that is 1. Now look at DP0. How many ways can you get this sum 0? If you check in my results, I am getting a 0 by one way over here and by one way over here. So I get a total of 2 ways. So I will write down dp0 equals to 2. And similarly, how do you get a sum of 2? So to get a sum of 2, how many ways are possible? Out of these values, just check this path and there is only one way possible. So I will write down 1 over here. So this is how I am incrementally updating my DP array. Let us do one more step and it will become really fun. My DP array is updated and I have covered 2 elements in my array. It is time for the third element now. I take up the third element and then once again what will happen? For every sum, I will have 2 choices available. Either I do a plus 1 to the sum or I do a minus 1. And this condition will be reflected for each of the sums that I have already obtained. These are all the different ways, correct? So now what will be the new sums possible? If the sum was minus 2 and I pick a plus 1, then the new sum becomes minus 1. If the sum was minus 2 and I pick a minus 1, then the sum becomes minus 3. If the sum was 0 and I pick a plus 1, the sum becomes 1. If the sum was 0, I pick a minus 1, then the sum becomes minus 1. If the sum was 2 and I pick a plus 1, then I get a 3. If the sum was 2, I pick a minus 1, then I get a 1. So these are all the new sums that I have obtained. So naturally, we will have to update our DP array because at every instance, this DP array is storing that to get a particular sum, how many ways are possible. And these are all the sums that I have obtained up till this point. So to update the DP array, I will say, okay, to get a sum of minus 3, how many ways are possible? And to check this, see this path. There is only one way possible, right? So I will write down 1 over here. To fill the next element, dp of minus 1. This is very interesting and observe this part very carefully. To get a sum of minus 1, how many ways are possible? So you had one path over here because this was one way and you added a plus 1. And then you have one more path over here. And what does this tell you? You already had 2 ways over here, right? So for these 2 ways, you could add minus 1 and then you will get a minus 1 again. So to get a total of minus 1, I have 3 paths possible. One path over here and 2 paths from over here. So dp of minus 1 will be 3. To get a sum of 1, how many ways are possible? I can get a sum of 1 by this path and then I can get a sum of 1 by this path. So once again, how many total number of ways? 2 plus 1. And that gives me 3. Similarly, for this last sum 3, how many ways are possible? I just got one path over here. So this will be equal to 1. So this DP array, it is updating at every instance and it is telling me that up till this point, all of these sums are possible. And these are the total number of ways by which you can create that expression. Now let us do the next step. This should really clarify things for you. My DP array is now updated and I have covered up till this particular point. Now it is time to consider the next available integer. And once again, for every sum, you will have two choices available. Either you do a plus 1 or you do a minus 1. So for each of these expressions, you will have a new sum possible. And to find out that sum, what will you do? So if the sum was minus 3 and you do a plus 1, you get minus 2. Minus 3, minus 1, and then you get a minus 4. If the sum was minus 1 and you do a plus 1, you get a 0. Minus 1, and you get a minus 2. And similarly, you see that I have all of these sums possible up till this particular path. So once again, what is the next step? You have to update your DP array. And then what do I see? I see DP of minus 4. That means how many ways can I reach the sum minus 4? So if you look at this list of all the sums, I see a minus 4 over here and there is only one way to reach it. So I write down 1 over here. To get a sum of minus 2, I look at all of my sums. I see it at two places. So this is one path and there were 3 paths to reach over here. So 1 plus 3, that gives me a 4. To get a sum of 0, I see the sum 0 available. And how many paths are possible? There are 3 plus 3 paths possible. So dp0 will be 6. Similarly for dp2, I have 3 paths here and 1 path here. And for the last dp4, I only have one path available. My DP array is once again updated and I have covered one more step. Try to work out this final step on your own. Your DP array is now updated and for each of these particular sums, you have to now consider the last element as well. And then once again, there will be two possible choices, either a plus 1 or a minus 1. And for each of these choices, you will find a new sum. And then you will find out all of the sums that are possible up till the last point. So once again, we will update our DP array. So my DP array will now start to look something like this. And how can you get a sum of minus 5? There is only one path possible. To get a sum of minus 3, you have one path over here and you have 4 paths over here. To get a sum of minus 1, you have 4 paths here and you have 6 paths over here. To get a sum of 1, you have 6 paths here and 4 paths here. To get a sum of 3, you have 1 path here and 4 paths here. And finally, to get a sum of 5, you only have one path available. And this is where you stop because you don't have any other value to consider, right? And now look back at your target value. The target value was 3. That means you have to find out that to get a sum of 3, how many ways are possible. So you will look at this particular value and it is telling me that to get a sum of 3, 5 ways are possible. So you see how we are reusing all of our previous results and then evaluating the new total number of ways possible. So based upon this idea, let us quickly do a dry run of the code. On the left side of your screen, you will have the complete code to implement this solution. And on the right, I have a sample input array that is passed in as an input parameter to the function find target sum ways. So what is the first thing that we do? First of all, we create our map and add the base condition in. That is, to find a sum of 0, there is only one way possible. And that is how you initialize things, right? Next, what you will do is, you will start a for loop to iterate over each of the integer in the array. And that is exactly what we were doing, correct? And in this for loop, what will you do? You need to create a new DP array that will store what happens after including a single element, correct? And how do you populate this new DP array? You will evaluate what happens if you add the number with a positive 1 and what happens if you subtract the current element and then find out the value. So based upon both of these conditions, you update your DP array, and then what happens? You get a new DP array. So this new DP array is telling me that to get a sum of 1, one way is possible, and to get a sum of -1, only one way is possible. This inner for loop ends now, and then once you get out, what do? You need to update your original DP array, and that is where I say DP equals to next DP. So my new DP array starts to look like this. And once again, what will happen? This loop will run again, and a new DP array will be created. And then what will you do? You will go over each of these elements in the DP array and try to consider the next element possible. This will again give you a new DP array, and then as this loop ends, once again you will assign this new DP array to the original DP array. So this loop will continue running, and at the very end, to get the result, you just return DP at the target value. And if the target value is not available, you simply return a 0. That means this result or this target is not even possible. The time complexity of this particular solution is order of n square because you are running two nested loops. First of all, to iterate over each of the integer in the array, and then another loop to iterate over each of the DP sums that you have found. And the space complexity of this solution is order of n because there can be n different sums possible when you're trying to find out the total number of ways while iterating through each of the element one by one. I hope the solution is now a bit more clear to you. As per my final thoughts, I just want to say that whenever I see problems on dynamic programming, I would try to approach it in an iterative manner rather than a recursive manner. Because with iterative approach, you can actually see what is happening at every step. And then debugging also becomes very, very easier. Sometimes a recursive solution may seem smaller and easier to do, but going through it can be a little tricky. And that was the main problem in all of the solutions that I have found out about this problem. So tell me, what do you guys think? How did you find the iterative approach? Does it help to simplify things a bit more? Tell me everything in the comment section below, and I would love to discuss all of it with you. As a reminder, if you found this video helpful, please do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This keeps me motivated and I can make more such videos. Also, a huge shout out to all of the members who support my channel. You guys really keep me going. And as a member, you do get priority reply to your comments and early access to new videos as well. Stay tuned for my upcoming videos. Until then, see ya.